King Alfred the Great is on the run from the Vikings, right? And he dives into this vast network of salty marshes that completely covered this area during the 9th century. And he sees this little mud hut that belongs to a swineherd and his wife, and he tells them that he's a deserter from the English army, and they agree to hide him. And the swineherd goes off and gets on with his jobs. She goes off and does her chores. And Alfred's sitting there, completely wrapped in thought, and he doesn't notice this huge black cloud pouring out of the fire, and the swineherd's wife comes back in, and she is absolutely livid. "You couldn't be bothered to keep an eye on my cakes, could you?" she says. "But you wouldn't mind shoveling them down your throat when they were baked, would you, you greedy fat lummox?" So what does Alfred do? Does he storm off in some kingly huff? No, Alfred the Great is a man of the people. He's like some 9th century Che Guevara figure. He just apologises profusely, and in some royal way that I've never quite understood, he uses the whole experience as a kind of learning curve that enables him to gather all his people together and lead them in another charge against the Vikings.
Hello, are you Mr. Morgan?
That's right.
Hello, my name's Mick Aston from the Time team.
How do you do?
This is Phil Harding.
How do you do?
So, Robbie, what's the significance of this place, apart from the fact that Alfred hid in a few square miles of bog? What does it tell us?
Well, really, I suppose it is that was the kingdom of the West Saxons, or even the kingdom of the Saxon English. At one point, in the time that we're discussing this weekend, in 878, Alfred's kingdom had shrunk to the few acres that surround Athelney. The particular reason why we know so much about Alfred is from the fact that a chap called Asser, who was a Welsh friend of his and became one of his bishops, wrote a very detailed life about him. It's the only life of a Saxon king that we have of that kind. At the time that we're talking about, he was just coming up to 30. He was the 4th son of his father, and in fact the 4th son to be king. I don't suppose he ever expected to be king in his early years, with 3 elder brothers between him and the throne, but he had a horrendous situation to face, because the Danes had literally split England in 2. They'd cruelly slaughtered most of the kings of places like Northumbria and East Anglia, and were obviously intent on taking the rest of England for themselves. But I think he wanted to get where people who didn't know the exact lie of the land wouldn't find him. He didn't, by all accounts, have very many followers with him, and so he ended up at the Isle of Athelney.
So who are the people who are attacking him?
Guthrum, king of the Danes, who is pursuing him, trying to find out where he is, and wreak one of those peculiarly nasty vengeances which the Vikings had up their sleeves. They practiced what was known as the blood eagle, which was a peculiarly nasty form of death in which they kind of slit the victim down the front while living, peeled back the ribs, and then flung back on either side the lungs to form a living blood eagle.
It's so disgusting.
It is absolutely revolting. And if that wasn't enough, you know, they went in for a tidy bit of crucifixion, by the way. You are talking about rather brutal, ruthless men.
Now, I've always assumed that part of this was simply black propaganda put about by the Anglo-Saxons because they were on the losing end. The Vikings really were as barbaric as they were painted.
Yeah, I mean, this was really a sacrifice to their gods. This was the way they sacrificed to Odin, basically. And so it was part of their ritual, if you like, part of their religion.
This is what it must have been like for Alfred. I can't even move, let alone run away from any Vikings. So, what happened to him? Was he split down the middle and had all his guts scooped out until his lungs were flapping around by his ears? No, of course not. We may have to take Asser's biography with a pinch or two of salt, but basically his character analysis of Alfred seems to have been about right. People trusted him, they liked him, they believed he was working in their interests, and so they followed him. And miraculously, within a year of his terrible defeat, he got all the people round here together and they'd marched out and they defeated the Vikings at the Battle of Edington. And that's when this weird double act started. As soon as the battle was over, saintly Alfred converted horrible Guthrum to Christianity, and immediately they started going on this strange procession all round the Somerset lowlands, all round the places where Alfred had been hiding just a few months previously, with Guthrum all dressed in white to symbolise his conversion to Christianity. It's very odd. Although actually I feel a bit like Alfred and Guthrum at the moment. It's Saturday morning. I've been wandering around this smelly marsh for the last 24 hours trying to get this story together, and I've got absolutely no idea what the archaeologists have been doing at all. I think if it's all right with you lot, I'll climb out of here and get back to the real world. Can someone give us a hand, please? I'm stuck.